Welcome to the GamesNet Berlin Europe podcast. Here, we speak with extraordinary games industry professionals and listen to their story, to learn all about what they've built and who they are. GamesNet Berlin Europe is the international games industry initiative of MediaNet Berlin-Brandenburg, the networking association for the media, creative and digital industries in Germany's capital region. My name is Simon Ohler, and I will be your host for this program. Today, we are speaking with Jonathan and Leonard from Tumult Kollektiv. Tumult Kollektiv is a music and sound collective based in Berlin. They create music and sound design for games like Horizon Forbidden West, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and Borderlands 3, as well as smaller titles like Pine or 100 Days. Together we speak about how the band got together in Enschede, why Leonard got kicked out of an apprenticeship with a well-known music producer in LA, maybe connected to that, maybe not, managing the fine line between ambition and arrogance, and where the ambition for the crew comes from in the first place. We talk about some childhood influences both in music and in games and in work ethic. We talk a lot about what it means to be an artist or a creator. We get some tips and tricks from the guys on how to make it in music and sound for games. And we also try to find out more about natural creativity, creating from a place without pressure or without having to fight somebody or without having to fight ourselves. I really like that. I hope you enjoy it too. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation with Tumult Kollektiv.
Hello and welcome to the GamesNet Berlin Europe podcast. Today we have a very new concept, which is we have two guests. Number one, we have Leonard van Voorst, who's a composer, sound designer, and artist. And then on the other hand, we have Jonathan Howe, composer and sound designer for video games. Those two are co-founders of the Tumult Kollektiv, a Berlin-based audio collective with a Dutch background story. And I met Leonard actually about a year ago, which was at an online event back then, since events used to be online at that point in 21. That was Indigo 2021. And it was funny because we were both actually in an online meeting and found out that we were both doing this online meeting at a Netherlands event in quotation marks from Berlin. 2 weeks ago now, we actually traveled together in a physical delegation to Indigo 2022. With GamesNet Berlin Europe, which was our first delegation travel, which is the stuff that we do when we don't record podcasts, actually bring companies together. And so we went there, had a nice time. Obviously, now I have met Leonard a few times in person. And yeah, the new concept of today with the two guests comes because I wanted Leonard to come on here. He said, well, Florian, I'm very sorry, but I'm too scared to do this alone. Can I please bring a friend? So I said, well, this is how everything started here. That's what Simon said to me, hence why I'm here.
Correct.
And now the teams are basically even on both sides. So it's 2 versus 2 today in this game. And to get rid of the fear in the room, I would just say, well, guys, let's hear from you. Introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what's currently important to you.
Wow. What's currently important to us? Well, first of all, thanks, Florian, for having us on here. And thanks for the beautiful introduction. Our jubileum was beautiful in Amsterdam. And I'm happy to now introduce Jonathan here as well.
Hello.
Digitally. Yeah, so we are both from Tumult Kollektiv. And I'm originally Dutch, but also half German. And Jonathan is...
Thanks for the introduction, Florian. I'm originally German, but I moved to the Netherlands for my studies, which is where I met Leonard and when we started working together. So during my studies, I learned Dutch as well, and I'm sometimes mistaken for one as well, but I'm not.
Yeah.
At the moment, important for us, I think, is the move that we're planning to our new studio, which... we're planning to build in the upcoming month, and that's been taking a lot of headspace and just planning, but it's also super exciting.
To wind that back a little bit, that move comes after a time of you guys. I remember when we first talked, looking for a space to co-rent here in Berlin. Basically, you were looking around, looking to find people to share a space. So you're now at this point where you actually found something. I saw some pictures, which at this point I would say look very rough in that space. So yeah, you found a space in Berlin, and now you will build your own studio in there, correct?
Correct.
And you also want to bring other people with you there.
Even more correct.
Yeah. So why?
So it started when we came here to Berlin, and you know, we were working together, and we lived together in a VG, and we always had the idea, you know, okay, we kind of want to have a studio and have a split work and private life situation going on. And then I think through Corona, I also realized how good that is, because all the other people that are suddenly doing home office, they're like, hey, this home office thing is really difficult. And then I was like, oh yeah, we lived that for a long time now. But you never realize it when other people don't give you that feedback as well, at least for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, we did realize it a little bit, but I think then we really started to realize, like, oh, damn, I think we just need to split it for many reasons.
So you were basically fine until they told you that it wasn't fine, maybe?
No, I think we realized that we weren't fine, maybe in that sense.
Yeah, it takes some perspective, you know. I mean, as musicians, it's really tricky to find a space where you can work in, because you need a lot of space and you need it for yourself. So a lot of musicians just work from their bedroom studios nowadays, and it's so normal. And I've been doing it for so long that it's sometimes hard to even relate to what maybe are the disadvantages, and it helps to. If all of a sudden other people have the same experience and you can relate to them, and then you're like, oh yeah, all these symptoms you're describing, I definitely feel those as well, but I just thought that was normal.
Yeah. Do you want to get into that a bit? I'm kind of curious about it. I'm also a big at-home worker. I really like it, and here's your chance to ruin it for me.
Yeah, I mean, we heard those voices as well of people really loving it, but I've also heard the journey of people saying, oh, I love it, and then after 1 year or 2 years of Corona, they're like, you know what, let's get back to it. So I think it's obviously still down to personality. I think some people fare better in a home office situation than others, but this is sort of home office turned up to the extreme, where you are in the same house with the 3 people that you work with, and you constantly see each other. You constantly do everything together.
I think it's amazing that it has worked this long. And I think that's part of like your question earlier. Why are we wanting to have other people there? I think one of the like fundamental ideas of our collective is, which we discovered during our studies together, is how much we learned from each other during working together, and probably even more than we learned from the classes was just like us working together, trying to help each other. And that's something that we hope to cultivate as well with the new studio spaces, find other musicians, other artists. We have a game development studio moving in there as well, which is super exciting to have like this cross-discipline influences. And I think that's where we see a big opportunity.
And we have more people around us to show us what's normal, and we don't need a pandemic of people having home offices to show us what a normal working condition is.
Can you please show us how to work? Yeah. So does that also mean that secretly there's like, you started to hate each other after a while? Will you admit it on this podcast live to our audience?
I mean, there are probably things that we don't like about each other after this thing. But as Jonathan said, I think it turned out pretty well for the fact that we work together now for 3 years in this VG.
Yeah, I think the relationship changes for sure, though, because before that, like you work together and then maybe you see each other on the weekends, and then it's like a friends hangout sort of thing, and you talk about your problems, but now all your problems are your shared problems. And it becomes more of like a family situation, I think, which has like, it's super close and super intimate, but sometimes you need someone else to talk to.
Yeah. Like Jonathan got so tired of all my relationship problems. I always came to him and was like, oh, what about this and this? And sometimes I would just like walk into his room and he knew what I was going to ask, and I wasn't going to ask anymore because I saw his face. So that stuff does happen.
So that means that basically the people you're looking for now are also like buffer people, you know, to like keep the Tumult Collective apart.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I think what the whole home office versus like COVID thing brought to me, because I also had times in my life where I worked from home before COVID, and there always was this thing like, yeah, you know, depending on how long the streak goes, I'm fine with it. But what I narrowed it down to is basically this: home office for me is fine as long as I know that it's a choice. So if I do it, then, well, 2-3 days a week, I can be super productive, etc. But if I feel like there's no other option for me than to work from home at that point, which obviously was the case during COVID, it becomes super annoying and stressful to me, because it feels like I'm just locked in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think especially what Jonathan also mentioned, creatively, you need your space in some way. And I can imagine that if it's a choice that we could make, that would be super nice then, because then you could still decide. You could still decide like, oh, hey, today we're having this sort of administrative day. Tomorrow we're doing a more like a creative day. We could do that in the studios. We could do this other thing in our homes. You know, I think then you're more flexible and sort of chill about it.
But to get to that point that you are at now, I think we need to also rewind a little bit, because obviously to be those, I think you're, correct me if I'm wrong, like 3 people are living together.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a 4th as well, but she's not part of the company.
Ah, okay. So, but for you to be in the situation of also looking for a place together and everything, you did this because you knew each other from before. So I want to jump into the whole, like, how did you guys start out together, and how did that happen? Tell us about that.
Well, it starts basically in Enschede, which is a city in the Netherlands, small city, very boring. Don't go there.
Can't even pronounce it.
Do you want to do it, Florian? Do you want to give it a try?
Enschede.
Oh, it's not too bad. Yeah.
You even did it in the Dutch way, not even in the German and Enschede way.
I wanted to try hard mode.
Very good. Are you with that in games as well?
Yes.
Very good. Well, yeah, so it started in Enschede, where there was a studies called media music, and it's part of a conservatory. And I started there 2 years before Jonathan and Alex, our third part of Tumult Kollektiv, started there. And I was doing sort of electronic music, and the studies is pretty broad. You can sort of do what you want. You can go in the direction you want, but it has a focus on sort of being an artist or media composer in music. And after 2 years of sort of doing electronic music, I was, getting more aware of that I wanted to be more varied and sort of, I love games since I was little, so it was a logical step for me to sort of decide to look more into music for games, because I always really liked doing these sort of ambient type of pieces as well that give you a very specific vibe. And I always need sort of context around me, because otherwise things don't make sense. To, like, if I'm alone doing something, I always question if if I'm doing it right, if I should do it, if what am I doing at all is what I find myself asking then a lot. And then if you have someone to sort of ping pong around with, it feels much more real and sort of it makes much more sense to do. And I feel like it has more purpose. And in my class, there was nobody who was doing or interested in music for games. So then I started looking around, and there was this new sort of batch of first years that came in. And I remember
juicy ersties, as we call them.
Yeah, juicy ersties.
Or in the voice of a popular video game character, raw, fresh meat.
Nice.
Exactly. I saw this fresh meat.
Oh my God.
Jonathan.
In a video game.
Well, I heard, I think that before I saw Jonathan, I heard his stuff on SoundCloud, and that's how I just heard it, and I was like, hey, that's cool. And I told my teacher, I want to work with this guy. And he was like, are you sure he's in the first year? I was like, yes, I want that. And then I think he put us in touch, or we just got in touch somehow.
Yeah, I remember there was like, for us, the opportunity came up to take part in the game audio minor thing they were offering, where we collaborated with another school from Reda, which might come up later as well. And they offered us to work together with a 3-year project, which I was super excited about. I think that's how we got in touch at first. We worked on like a small little game lab project.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was like a student project that just got dumpstered at some point, but we had fun making the music, and we vibed, you know.
Yeah.
Then back then we were still friends, like we, you know.
Honeymoon phase.
Yeah, we would come around to each other's place and like play games, hang out, stuff like that. Friends things.
Nice. And then at what point did you become more than two?
Pretty much during I think we worked together for like almost a year doing various game projects and soundtracks together. And on the side, I was also working with Alex and Milan as well. And we started to work on advertisement music and projects like that, where we do like pitches for ad music, which we did for a while. That was super exciting.
Drop some names, Jonathan. Do it.
Oh, yeah, I don't know, whatever. We worked on car commercials like Porsche and a couple others.
Sheesh.
Which was really cool because
others. Wow.
I'm not good with the dropping names. But
No, Jonathan hates it. That's why.
Drop some names, Leo.
No.
Jonathan, the way you just counted all your projects out reminded me of my high school teacher who was yelling at us for doing everything wrong that day. And she said, well, the chairs are not in the right position, etc., etc. Right? It's the classic list one and then just say etc. Yeah, and then you got a big list, you know, Porsche and all the others. Yeah.
All the others.
No, great projects, dude.
Yeah. I think that already gives away. I always
gives a good trajectory, you know. It's like driving a Porsche. Your life must be great, you know.
I don't even have a driver's license.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Please continue. No more interruptions.
No, about my life now. Anyway, we worked on that together, and through that we sort of noticed that we had a very good and productive working relationship. And after working,
so there was Alex and you, right? So you and Alex,
we worked on a lot of commercials together. And then I think the next step was sort of the internships we all did, where Alex, Leo, and Milan as well, who used to be our fourth member, went to Los Angeles. I think that's a good one for you to tell, Leo. It's probably more.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so there was this time in our studies where we basically have to do an internship, and I was really keen on going to LA because the head of our studies, he was always all about LA. I don't know. It kind of worked. He really implemented this idea into my head that I should go to LA because that's where the big shots are. And specifically one composer, Junkie XL or Tom Holkenborg, is like a Dutch, huge film composer who did Mad Max. Here I go with the name dropping. And he had this sort of connection to our studies where he was sometimes did these master classes. So there was this sort of feeling of a connection being there that you could make use of or like tap into, I would say. So there was already an ex-student doing an assistantship at Tom's place in LA. So I was like, oh, I want to get in that as well. So I contacted the assistant and said, hey, can I join in on this? And they were positive about it. So then I went to LA at some point and started my internship with Tom Holkenborg for 3 months was the plan. Only that after I think 1.5 months, I got thrown out.
Right.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it was a complex situation where I was like, I think I was bragging around on Reddit a little bit, which was kind of a dumb thing to do. I'm going to admit it. I was a bit of a brat back then. And maybe I still am, but I hope I am less.
I'll reserve judgment.
Yes. And also he didn't appreciate that I was sort of chatting to other composers, which I can understand. It was sort of...
So you were in an exclusive relationship, yeah?
Yeah, there we go with the relationship advice again.
Yes. I'm sorry, guys.
You shall not have
dragging
other
you all into
composers next to me.
Does this count as also being brats now? Are we all being brats now about this?
No. This is not bratty. Like bragging on the internet about being an intern somewhere. That's a bit bratty. I admit it, and that's one thing where I wake up sometimes and I'm like, oh shit, why did I do that ever?
Yeah. You shall be forgiven, my son.
Thank you. I mean, saying it out loud. And standing to it, that's how you gain forgiveness, right?
I think so.
Exactly.
Yeah, and showing your remorse, which you are doing. Honestly.
Exactly.
So
I hope Papa Tom is listening and he forgives me.
Okay, but you were feeling a bit big shot like, huh? And then you were like, and then what he found out and just straight gave you the boot?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
I was sort of aware that it was, I think deep down, I wasn't actively aware that this wasn't the place for me, but I think deep down somewhere I sort of knew. So I was, I had this huge Excel list of sort of composers that were out there in LA, and I was in between, I was contacting them and asking if I could, come by for a cup of coffee or something. And they oftentimes agreed, which was super cool. Like, Mikolaj Strurinski was one of them. He's like the co-composer of The Witcher. And Ethan Carter. No. Do you know the name, Jonathan? The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really, really cool soundtrack. And I really admired his work. And he's super open and chill. And we hung out a couple of times. And they all are super open in the US about sort of meeting and hanging out. So I made use of that, and that was really, really nice. And then once I got thrown out, I looked at my Excel list again, and I queued the montage music, and I started like harassing all these people, I think, with emails. I even there's one composer, Brian Reitzel, who did the score for Hannibal, the TV show, who I was an enormous fan of, and I was so keen on meeting him that I think I wrote his wife, who had a acupuncture studio.
Oh God!
Right.
And I found that somehow, and then
you were still in LA at the time, right? You were
yes, I had 1.5 months left in LA, and I was very keen on making use of that. Because my family also sort of they invested like 1,000 or 2,000 or something into getting me there. So I wasn't about to show back up with empty hands or something. So I felt I need to make use of this.
Yeah.
And
then you found Brian Reitzel's wife's acupuncture studio.
Exactly.
Well, he did agree to meet you, right?
He did. I don't know
It's
why.
crazy to me. Yeah. If someone wrote my wife, if he could meet me, I think I would steer away from that person.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. If Papa Ratzel's out there.
Hey, man, confess all your sins. This is the place.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was incredibly cool. He gave me a vinyl, which I then lost in the taxi.
Jesus.
I mean, I'm on a full confession spree right here.
Yes, get everything out.
That's good. Get it all out.
And oh god, yeah. Then there was this a Dutch guy who I had no idea about. Who I wrote him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I love helping Dutch people," and I was like, "Okay." And I saw that he did something with EA, and I had no idea what. And then I came out to him with like a 1.5 hour Uber drive, which was so expensive, and I was like, "Why am I doing this?" But then I met him, and he said, "Oh, you know what? Let's meet tomorrow in my studio." So I was like, "Oh, okay, this is some kind of check, I guess." And then it turned out that he was an audio director for EA for a long time. And then he was like, "Oh, who do you want to meet?" And I was like, I guess Jesper Kyd. And then he was like, "All right, I'll call him." And he called Jesper Kyd, and for the next day, I had a meeting with Jesper Kyd. And then he was like, "I'm looking for an assistant, and do you want to help me with some scores?" And it was a really weird roller coaster.
With the name dropping, you need to also maybe add like what their work is, like for Jesper Kyd.
Jesper Kyd,
sure. Yeah, I mean, he's known for the Ezio's theme, which has let's see how many plays on Spotify. I'm gonna number drop now. 35 million.
Which theme is that?
That's the Ezio's Family, which is from Assassin's Creed
it's 2.
2, I think, with Ezio. And he did number 1, and now he came back for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. He did Borderlands, Vermintide.
Hitman is also a big one.
Hitman is probably his first big thing. So I got
That's kind of crazy.
Really lucky in this weird chain of events. Now I'm done talking.
I've got this is a great story. I've got some questions for you guys, like in contextual fashion, I'm feeling, because it seems to me from what I'm gathering from your story that you were both students there in Enschede, and there was this, but it must have been like, well, I hear all this ambition, right? Because Jonathan, you were already working, Porsche and all the others, and making things for ads, which the ad business is like a pretty, let's say, reputable business, and many filmmakers want to go in there, and I'm sure on an audio level it's the same basically. And then clearly you've had some ambitions, Leo, going to LA. Oh my God! And and that seems like that was the case from the beginning. So I'm not really hearing like we're like students, hang out, do what students do in the Netherlands. I know I studied there too. Many great opportunities to do things as students, but
Studying.
I'm sure you did that too, but you're like also working, you're going in.
Yeah.
What's that about? What's that ambitious streak? Are you just entrepreneurially minded, or were you, what's going on?
Interesting. I think that's sort of like maybe one of the things that made us come together. I think sort of seeing other people that strive really hard to achieve something, and that inspires. And I think for one, the study was really good at sort of shaping you that way. I think they put a lot of focus on, because music is obviously super hard to market and to find a market for. But that was one of the like key components of the study, I think, is like get those people to be working as quickly as possible, give them the autonomy to be doing projects on their own, and just support them doing that. And I think for me as well, even before I started my study, the goal was very clear for me. I had been working on a Berlin-based project, actually, Clark. I did the soundtrack for that during my Abitur, like during finishing high school, essentially.
Which is what I heard on SoundCloud. What I was like, ooh, that's cool.
Yeah. So for me, I always like, my background is from bands, and I played in punk bands a lot. And at some point, all those
What
bands.
did you play? Like what instrument?
Bass mainly. I also play some guitar sometimes and keys, but mainly I was a bass player.
Okay.
And sort of all those bands split up around the same time, and I was like, oh, this is like, I need to take this into my own hands. So I think, and then my background story, so that I got on Reddit and I was like, hey, I want to do video game music. And I put like a post up, and I got like 300 responses to the one demo that I had posted. So I think during like the whole like last year of my school, I was sort of working on various like Reddit indie game projects. That was
Which is also fun. Kind of nuts, right? I mean, I don't think that would work anymore today.
Why don't you think so?
Well, I mean, this whole composer email, you know, what game developers always talk about, like the hundreds of composer emails they have in their mailbox.
Yes.
And I don't know if it doesn't seem like it would work anymore. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think maybe I hit the algorithm or something. But anyway, that gave me like the feeling of, oh, there's so much work here, and I love doing this. I can actually do this. So I think from that I had like a very clear goal of what I wanted my work to be.
But do you think that at that point, just to clarify, were you offering like, I want to do music for games for free, or were you saying, I need work, please pay me to make music for a game?
No, it was definitely for free.
Because I think if you go to Reddit today and offer free music for games, I think there will be always people asking for free stuff.
Yeah, I thought the same because the composer email, quote unquote, that seems to be like a cold outreach or cold warm, whatever outreach. It's like, hey, do you need a composer for your game? We are a studio. But the classic, you know, you're in the last year of your studies, you need something to busy your hands, essentially. All the bands split up, and then you're like, hey, yo, got some bandwidth, anybody want some music for the game? That's like, and then, you know, you bet as many new composers as there are as many new game devs, right? That's getting easier and so on as well. So and I feel that that's sorry, no, you go ahead.
No, yeah, but like what you're saying is definitely true, and I think it took like a while of doing that to build a bunch of contacts and find teams that we have been working with for a long time now that are now like becoming bigger studios, and the sort of working relationship we have with them is so important to us, super valuable. One more thing I wanted to mention about Enschede, though, it's I think it's a city, but there's not really a lot to do.
So a catalyst.
I think because there's not really like, there is nightlife, but it's like only if you like really shitty music. So I think the people there get really focused on their study.
Yeah. And it's really easy to find each other, I think. Like, I mean, obviously we were studying together, so it wasn't hard anyway, but like you realize that the amount of people that you want to hang out with is really limited, and then you just sort of stick to those folks, which is different here in Berlin, I would say, but that's another topic. But yeah, that I think Enschede did help in that regard. I agree with Jonathan.
A little bit of creative, let's say, frame and restriction, so to speak. You know, less to do in a way, therefore more to do in the other department. Less to, you know, more shitty music around you, therefore more good music. Necessity to make good music yourself.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and it is interesting, this mindset, and I agree that it's really what we saw in each other and what brought us together. I don't know where it comes from. I always have to thank my mom for a lot of things that she instilled in me, and I think that was also there, this sort of belief to do big things, which sounds weird, but yeah, I think this brattiness that I was talking about was a bit of my ego sort of playing in, where I was really convinced that I was going to do great stuff, and I'm thankful for Tom for slapping it out of me a little bit.
Sure,
at least
nice.
Not too much, you know. Like it's still there, but I think it's a bit more on a sort of healthy level.
Yeah, I mean, these things need to be need to be tempered a bit. And if you're, but you know, I would also say it's the proper order in which they went, you know, because like you said, you were so adamant about going to LA, let's say. I'm sure not everybody was, because many, you know, and many people don't have the chutzpah like to just write to a bunch of people, you know. I think that is a very kind of a highly ambitious move, which can like devolve into arrogance, which is kind of what you're describing as bratty, but then it also has a very high floor, like of opportunity. So that then just becomes a balancing act, which you have to do, and then, you know, you get forgiveness for your transgressions, and then, but that's good, you know. And I that's why I asked about your ambition. Like, this is a great thing, and I would like to ask also, since you brought it up, how did you guys grow up? Because it's always interesting for me to ask, let's say, ambitious / successful / entrepreneurial, or just very creative people. What did you get instilled in you? And maybe you can just begin, Leo, with what you said about what you learned from your mom. Like, what was that? This proclivity to think big, or however you describe it.
Yeah. First of all, I agree completely with you that you know, this sort of time where I was somewhat more towards the arrogant side, I still pick the fruits of that time, you know. Like, I'm not gonna say like be arrogant, but sort of, I was so intensely set on this that I really went for it. And now I'm in a bit of a different mindset, but it did play a big part in where I am now. So it's a weird balance. But back to your question. I think my mom is a person who has this sort of engine inside of her. She sort of raised me and my brother alone for a long time. Until it was sort of from when I was 8, I think, approximately. But then we always went back and forth between me and my dad. And my dad is sort of this really expert sound guy who has a big hi-fi set, and he listens to a lot of great music that I still listen to. So I think you can definitely see the influence from both sides, from my dad, from his ears and his sort of expertise about sound and hearing things and listening to good music, and my mom being the sort of engine that gives you this feeling of being able to do anything. And she was completely opposite of what you hear most of the time, where people say like, oh, I wanted to do music, but then my parents told me like, oh, I think you should do law, and we're going to disown you if you're going to study this artsy bullshit or something, you know. Yeah. My mom was the complete opposite. I think I wanted to do something with environmental studies. And she was like, I'm not sure. Maybe you should think about it for a year. And she just organized these internships for me, which one was at a bank, and I realized, okay, this is absolutely not what I wanted to do, even though it was fun. And then the second one was at a radio station where everyone seemed to have a lot of fun and a good time, and they were just sort of working on what they wanted to do. And when you're 18, it's not an obvious thought, you know. It's not obvious that, hey, maybe you should work on something that you really like. And I think this radio station just made it more feasible that you can make a living out of that. And it was actually Deutschland Radio Kultur here in Berlin. So
good station.
Yeah, that really, I mean, that was obviously a gigantic help from, you know, something that a lot of people don't get, where my mom was like, hey, do these internships, learn this thing. And then I remember sitting in the radio station and I wrote her this email and I was like, Mom, I think I want to do something with music because that's what I enjoy anyway. And she wrote back to me, Leonard, that's the first time I've heard something sensible from you in regards to your future.
Wow, I love that. What? That's so funny. Yeah. You sure you don't want to do the bank, kid? Have you really thought about it? Like, shut up, mom.
Exactly. So yeah, that was obviously a gigantic influence from my side. And then yeah, the energy of both parents is there. And one thing I always like to mention or love to say is the fact that I never was that much into music before I was 16 or something, and I didn't pick music in school because my friends were sort of playing in these bands that they didn't really let me play in, and I was like, well, fuck you guys. Am I allowed to say the F word?
Yeah,
I don't know.
You already did.
Anyway, screw you guys. I'm going to do my own thing. And I started like doing this electronic music thing when I was 16. So, and I never was, I'm still not good with any instrument, but still I'm doing it as a job. And I always love saying that because I was really insecure about it, I think for a long time, where I was like, oh, I can't play piano. I can't really play this. And, but we, with modern possibilities of these DAWs, like the digital workstations, the programs that producers use, you have all the options before you. You don't really need to be able to play a piano or guitar.
I think it's like all in your head as well. It's your vision and your ideas and how you realize them. And if you ask other people to play the instruments or whatever, it doesn't matter. If you have like a sonic idea and you can translate that well, that's what you need as a producer.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's sick. I just want to briefly add before we ask you, Jonathan, that it's a true blessing. I've had the same from my mom. Always the no, you can really do whatever you want. And I'm like, could you like tell me one thing I maybe should do? She's like, no. And I'm like, Speaking of creative boundaries, it's almost like too much freedom. But no, I'm very grateful. Like I know so many stories from the other side, like you described, the classic. Well, you better become a doctor, kid, or else. And do
you think people that really have to fight for the choice that they want to make have like a different energy in there, like a different determinant?
Yeah, but I've thought about this a lot, and it's like cycles and pendulum swings and stuff. And yeah, you can get like this really real hunger, like when you grow up really poor or something. That when you have like an ambitious energy that kind of like propels you to change your state, let's say, like your whether that's from being poor or being repressed, which is kind of the same thing really, then you get really hungry, but it's also very easy to overcompensate, right? But that's also a part of being young. So that can also be the arrogant part, ambitious and arrogant, or like, hungry and overcompensatory. And, it usually comes with a price, this energy. And then in the later years, we have to like balance that out a little bit. And when you grow up with a lot of opportunity and freedom, you also have to do a very hard job. Like, let's say pushing, against poverty is a hard job. Coming from a lot of freedom and opportunity, whether that's financial or just mental, you also have a hard job. And it's like to narrow yourself down and not, be too frivolous with your time and choices, because you have so much opportunity. It's the classic rich kid does a lot of drugs, and that's just frivolous. That's like not knowing how to properly allocate your resources. And getting that knowledge of who you are and where to allocate properly, that's really hard as well,
Yeah.
And then you have to do that later anyway, even if you've pushed successfully. Because when you push successfully one time from, let's say, poverty or something, and then you are somewhere, and then people have a tendency to like clamor onto it, to hold onto it.
Yeah.
And then if you want to become a even keeled like existence, you have to go one step back anyway and like relax for a moment and blah, blah, blah. So you always have to like make sure like you bring the pendulum to the middle a bit if you're looking for like more balance, let's say.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think having like wanting to prove something can take so much energy. And I do think that that's sort of when it's not from a natural point, and you constantly feel like you need to prove something, and you can't bring the pendulum to sort of calm down, then it can be incredibly exhausting.
Yeah.
But can I jump in here for a second? Yeah. Do you think that this having to prove something isn't also like, or the feeling that you want to do that, can that also be a very good like driving factor? Because absolutely. I definitely have that for some situations in my life where I am or was to a certain extent very, very adamant on I need to prove to those people that whatever they did was wrong, like the decision they made, what like in terms of how they saw me, or like in terms of what they thought I could do. Maybe I wasn't at the point in my life where I could do that, but I will get there and like prove them wrong. So I think for me, at some points, that was a very driving factor.
Absolutely, I 100% agree, and I think this is a really nice reference to this sort of bratty, non-bratty phase, or arrogant, non-arrogant phase, I guess, because I do think for a long time my motivation was a bit to prove something, or because I think it just got a little inflated, this sense of I can do anything. And then I remember at some point that making music just became stressful, and because I was constantly comparing myself to what's out there, and I was always sort of, it was also this sort of commercial music thing where you get a lot of references sent to you, and I noticed that people who are really happy making music, they really let go of what others around them did, and I was not in that headspace. I was always comparing, and I was always sort of checking my music to music that sounded similar, and then I was like, oh, what they did here is much cooler, and I need to get on that level. And then you're not discovering, you're not generating energy from a neutral point, but you're sort of trying to get somewhere. So it becomes this really frustrating process, for me at least, because
you're like fighting.
Yeah. And now after, in the beginning of making music, I think you mostly start in this sort of natural position. And then my ego got a bit inflated, and then I had different motivations. And then now I feel like I've come back to a much more natural and sort of healthy way of producing music, which is, not referencing and not trying to prove something, but making it from this sort of stillness, or you have no idea where you're going, and every step is a discovery that gives you energy to make more.
While you were talking about this, I'm not sure if that's like a concept but what I thought about is having that own like center or point from which you want to create, let's say, or be creative, or also, let's say, work, do something with your life. And then that external factor of wanting to prove something to somebody, it's like borrowed energy in a way, or like almost a fake energy. Like you're not doing it for yourself, maybe. You're just doing it for external reasons. Mm-hmm. And that can only get you so far. Like it's at some point you will probably realize that you're just competing or like proving to somebody external, when maybe some people don't notice, but yeah, maybe hopefully you get to that point where you focus back more on yourself.
I think also like there's very little like actual creativity there once you just chase something else, because what do you do when you reach it? Then you're at like the end point, and then there's still nothing there. You've just like sort of approached something that someone else had already done. And I think if you really want to be creative and find something unique, it needs to come from within and not be related to like reference music or temp music, which I don't know. A lot of people talk about like the problems with temp music in films, but yeah.
I have this little comparison story. I agree with all of you very much. This is like something I think a lot about, natural creativity. Kind of could talk about it for hours. Also want to move it forward a bit, but a little reference story, and maybe we can get a little bit to your like origins, John.
Sure.
I'm thinking of, because I know I brought it up, but I also want to like make a case and a stand for actually this fighting creativity, because it's a very young people energy, and it's very punk, and like I'm thinking of Metallica, and Megadeth, and like, I love like Kill 'Em All. It's the first Metallica album, 1983, I think. Yeah, should be right. And it's so raw, even compared to the next album, which I think is just 1 or 2 years later, Ride the Lightning. It's like, it's so like James Hetfield's voice is super high, and it's just like so angry, and it's like Seek and Destroy and Metal Militia and Whiplash, and it's just this, and there's this and Metallica obviously went on to make some really great albums afterwards, and then now there are still these titans of rock, they're like way bigger than just metal and blah blah blah. And then there's the story of Dave Mustaine, who was the Metallica lead guitarist, I think, in the beginning, and got kicked out, founded Megadeth, and Metallica are the people of like natural creativity. They just kind of, they started from like fighting energy, of course, and that made great albums, but then and then they became like, okay, like cool with themselves, and they did their own thing and blah blah. And if you have a look at Dave Mustaine, he's kind of like this antagonist figure, this has these little hunched shoulders, really tense position while playing. And you feel like until now, he never got out of the fight, right? So he's still like, basically all his music is like, fuck Metallica, I hate him. And he still makes the same music, kind of like, and it's just this, and he's still in this fighting spirit, right? And his whole success and creativity is based on like fighting and hate. And I don't know the guy, so I'm sorry, Dave, maybe that's not true, but that's just a avatar for that, I feel like. And then you always need you can do it when you're young, but like when you grow a bit older, then you will need to find the inner drive. Otherwise it's going to burn you out so hard, right?
Absolutely.
You will always need an enemy to continue your creativity, and that's not exactly sustainable, right? Many
you have to find more enemies.
Exactly. Or you just make one. You could just attack somebody, but we don't really want to do that. We want to be peaceful.
Absolutely. You can really see this in people. Like our EBB coach showed us like this clip of Mick Jagger in the BBC on last weekend, was it, or something?
Yes.
And then you can see that, they are coming from a source of sort of natural creativity, because he's 78 or something, and he's jumping around the stage with so much energy still. And I think that can only work if you did that from a source of sort of natural creativity. And as Florian said, I agree that it can be super helpful, and a combination of this sort of fighting energy, but also a base of natural creativity is I think, super important for artists.
Can you please explain, because I don't think that we will go super deep into that, but what's an IBB coach?
All right. I'll do a little commercial segment for you, Florian, or for the IBB. It's like in Berlin, as an instance of the government where you can sort of ask funding for a coach, and they have certain coaches, and we asked for this funding, and we got it, and so now we have a coach through them, and you get like 90% paid for the coachings. So you have to pay very little for, at least in our case, a very high quality coach.
Yeah.
Nice.
And this person is coaching you in?
In our business, what would
Business
you say?
development, like strategy, sort of building the brand and thinking about our different team roles, how we structure our work, what like the usual project pipeline looks like. Just, it's been really helpful to like look at all of that with someone else, because we've sort of built it up internally just through instinct, I think. And it just helped to be like, okay, what are we actually doing? And is there anything we can sort of streamline? Yeah, it's been super helpful and really nice to have some outside, again, perspective.
Shout out to Ulrike.
Yeah.
She's the
Bless
best.
her. Nice. Jonathan, do you want to give us a little bit of a backstory? And then I'm sure we can like jump in the present again and see a bit about the more businessy and gamey things.
Sure.
But yeah, for completion's sake, how did you grow up, and what gave you your instincts? And I'm still coming kind of from this ambition perspective, but doesn't have to be. What influenced you for the music, for what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think I was like a very unsatisfied child. Like I was very angry a lot of the time, and I was sort of like bumping up against rules and everything that sort of limited me, like school and getting up early. I was having like loads of trouble, and I think I was causing my parents like massive headaches and at some point it got so bad during Grundschule, which is like the first 4 years of school, that the head of our school wanted to transfer me to another school for children with sort of violence problems. A lot of people now get really surprised when I say it. But and I don't see the point. Like, I don't think it would have helped me to send me to a school with a bunch of violent kids so we can fight it out. I don't know. But I think, like, my father is actually, my mom is an architect and an artist, and my father is he's a musician, but mainly he does sort of coaching as well. He coaches groups and parents and children that have trouble in school. And as it goes, like when you do that for a living and then you get a child that has the exact same problems, it's a completely different thing, and you need to relearn everything. So I think he also learned a lot from me, but I think after we had a sort of like navigated this phase, I think it got better when I was around 10. At that point, they were like, okay, just get this kid through school and then support him with whatever he wants to do. Because if he doesn't want to, if he's not motivated, like intrinsically, then everyone's going to have a hard time, and me especially. And I think music was always like a thing that really, like, I don't know, I feel like I need to create music. It sounds maybe like sort of cliche to say, but if I'm not doing that, then I feel unsatisfied with myself, like I'm being lazy and I'm not actualizing myself. So this drive was always very strong with me. And I think at first I sort of looked for, it was also just sort of like the time of bands, right? There was so many punk bands in our town, and bands a lot less popular now, I think, but I was playing bass. And I remember specifically we had one weekend when I was like around 17, I think, where we recorded our first EP. And we spent the whole weekend in like a basement somewhere recording, tracking all the parts, and then me playing the bass. And it felt so nice and so purposeful. And I remember after the weekend, next day I had to go like back to school, and I could literally like cry because like it felt so useless. And I remember I was talking to my dad, and he was like, yeah, but sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do, but it made me so sad.
Yeah.
And I think from there, they've been super supportive, and also just giving me lots of trust and opportunity, and just believing in that my sort of, if I find my way and I pursue it, then they stand behind me fully, which I'm super grateful for.
I think also for you, when I hear this story about your youth, I just always love it, because Jonathan really is this incredibly tranquil person who is also, I think, the embodiment of natural creativity. But I always feel it's so weird that you had this enormous fight and you were so violent, because it almost feels like you had this sort of really intense package of something that maybe some people deal with throughout their life, and for you it was just condensed into multiple years in your youth, and then at some point you always say like you stop being angry, or what was the thing?
I find it like hard to know how to feel about it, because if I see someone who's like super like gets angry at like injustice and wants to change things, I'm so impressed, and I'm really drawn to that, and I think it's super cool to like have this energy inside you. And sometimes I feel like maybe I've sort of given up on that to like protect myself.
Oh, so do you think that you actually like swap to like complete opposite? Like you don't get angry at all now anymore?
Yeah, hardly. I can be
really,
a bit avoidant,
really
I think.
hard.
Yeah, it's really hard to get. I'd rather just like disengage if something like if there's a situation where I feel uncomfortable or I feel like, oh, this is so unjust. I have the tendency to be like, take a step back, disengage, and then see if I can do something from there, which I think I learned because it wasn't working for me to freak out every time. But I also like sometimes I miss like a little bit of like anger, you know? It's also a lot of energy there, similar to what you described earlier in relation to creativity.
This is fascinating to me. I mean, I don't want to like psychoanalyze you or something, also because I don't have the skill and it would just be like me rambling, but it's interesting how that stopped, and like would be really interesting to hear an expert talk about like why they think that is. But, or maybe you figured it out at some point better. I don't know. But like that fascinates me, that this complete switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have met quite a few people actually in my life who they were telling me similar things. They were super angry children and now they're super mellow. I think, I don't know. The nice theory is you learn to regulate yourself, and you know that not everything is super important for your life and that things take time and you just get relaxed. Or, as I said, maybe you sort of decide like, okay, maybe a lot of fights aren't worth putting all of myself into, you know? It's, yeah.
I've got two bits on it. I don't want to make this can fill the rest of the conversation. I don't really want that. So, I'll try to give it as a little impulse. So two things that reminds me of. One is, ADHD, like, or ADS, like the Germans call it. I'm reading a lot about that at the moment. I associate it strongly with this need to create, and, complete lack of satisfaction with circumstances that don't fit you very well, you know. So that's one impulse, and the other one about anger. I can really relate with that. I did a lot of like, I don't get angry, and then I used to get more sad instead, kind of like, and like depressed and avoidant, and I did some work to change it a little bit, and now. And I read a book called Radical Honesty, which is a bit weird sometimes, but it's also pretty good. And It discusses anger. And the metaphor that I really liked about it was an engine needs to fire all the time a little bit. If an engine only like holds back and then like, you know, small explosion good, big explosion bad.
Yeah.
And so I've taken that to heart a little bit, and it affected a lot for me, and made a lot of things better. Has a lot to do with honesty as well, which is like, you know, talking when I've got something to say. So for example, before I went on this bit, we're in a podcast as well, so I talk more consciously. So I'm like, hey, should I bring this up? Is this good for the timing? Blah, blah, blah. You know, and then I'm like, well, this is some knowledge that I have. It kind of feels like it wants to come out. Natural creativity, right? Okay, so I'll say it, and then I'll just make it a bit short. And then, so that's like little explosion, you know, versus, oh, I could keep it in, but maybe I would feel worse after or something.
Yeah.
What you say the same with like anger, with like, where I say more often like, hey, I'm a bit angry about that right now, you know, like, and then work from there. So yeah, that's what I have about it.
Definitely. And interesting what you said about like having to find your specific environment that you feel comfortable in and that works for you. I'm personally super grateful for sort of the situation we have now, where we met during our studies, really learned to trust each other, and from this have like the freedom to work on our own schedule, on our own projects, and that we have like the sense of ownership of the project that we do, and we get to pick what we want to work on and how we just structure and divide our work. And I think that's super helpful for me. And I'm really just grateful that we have this situation where we are now. It's interesting that you say that, like, you came up with that as well, with the having like finding a solution, like a situation that really suits you.
Yeah, that's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit that I have. I think it's like, I just need to, draw my own lines, create my own space. I think it's very important. So that's why I always ask as well, because I want to know how other people feel about that. Some come from this place, some come from this.
And I think it's super nice the way you described the ADS or ADHS, whatever it's called in English or German, in a way that it wasn't sort of this label of, oh, you don't function, because that's, I think.
No, it's actually, you're kind of like hyper functional. So so it's like a great precursor. And I have material on that. I can share that with you or with like the show notes. I know some people who talk about this really well. And so I think that's the correct frame. It's like hyper functional. It's like, okay, let me bring this to a topic. Games. For me, also, I would describe myself like that a bit. For me, games were so important, because it's this place where you can basically, in a good game, you can be hyper functional. You can think about like Stardew Valley. You can think about 7 things at the same time, StarCraft 2, you can like have to play really fast and precise, or any like shooter, the degree of stress it puts on your like perception, motor system and everything is so pleasant, right? That's I feel like that's really. So how did you guys feel about games? And what were your experiences with games as kids or later on? I think you said you were both into games.
Yeah, for me, it's always been, I've always been very much into like role-playing games. I play a lot of Das Schwarze Auge, which is sort of like a Dungeons and Dragons, but then the German version, which is interesting because it's not at all about being like functioning. It's all about expressing a character and sort of your creativity and playing as that character. And I even found like an online community. It's called Whisper Tales. They had like an Ultima online server running with like...
Yes.
You know it?
I was looking for free shards of Ultima Online at one point. I think I found them.
Yeah, it was quite a small server, but it was so much fun. I spent loads of hours in my youth there, like 13 to 17. I grew up on those servers for a big part. And I really enjoyed sort of the limitless nature of those sort of games. Nowadays, I enjoy like system-based games a lot as well, though. Slay the Spire is a game that I play a lot at the moment. Next to the more narrative, like Disco Elysium was a huge inspiration last few years. And now I love like either short indie experiences that aren't too long, but take me on a journey that I can actually finish, or like really mechanical games. But it's interesting, in my youth, I was definitely more like, I guess, role-playing, sort of exploratory games that are less system-focused.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to quickly connect to Simon's point about games and ADHD quickly before I go into games, because it really got me thinking. My little half-brother, he's like very hyperactive as well, and he loves games. So I think this dynamic between games and sort of hyper activity or creativity is really, really interesting, and a very interesting topic I would love to talk more about one time, because I also wonder if it's like a blessing or a curse in some way, maybe both, but perhaps until systems of schools learn to deal with it better, it's almost definitely going to be more of a blessing, because for me, games really was I think you learn a lot to handle systems, and I feel like when you're nowadays on a computer or doing music, you have to understand all these little systems constantly. And that's what games really teach you. I feel like you know, always play a new game and you always get a new system in front of you and you instantly learn to recognize it, to take it apart and understand it. You need to, if you want to be good, you need to, ausspielen, to completely master this system and understand how to make it work for you.
You become like an interface and rule set expert.
Exactly.
But you become like a meta expert because you become an interface and rule set learning and adapting and mastering expert, right?
Yeah. And I think it's super interesting. And as well, what you said about this sort of multiple instances of your brain being questioned at once is really, really interesting. Anyway,
you mentioned Stardew Valley and that, which is quite ironic, I think. But I had the same experience. I was always juggling all my tasks while the game just presents you this garden to relax in.
Yeah, no, of course. I have a crazy Stardew Valley experience. I was working at Twitch at the time, and I'm like, oh man, I've got so much work. Fuck this, you know. And I just want to play some Stardew Valley. And then in Stardew Valley, I started making like lists. Oh God, I got to do this, that. And I'm like,
it's stressing.
Am I procrastinating my work with virtual work? No! I almost never played Stardew Valley again afterwards because it sent me down a whole rabbit hole. But yeah, this is another conversation. We can have this in another context. I have we can talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
Which games did you grow up with, Leo?
So my brother was always sort of the one who played all the games before me, and then I joined in, which also made me play shooters really early, which my mom always hated. Like my brother was in this group of guys who were super good at Counter-Strike, and he was playing that, and then I, as a 10-year-old, was playing Counter-Strike or something.
Can I just please share that I was just thinking, I want to hear one person come with that story and say, yeah, I was really into shooters and my mom was like super happy about it.
Leo would have been the person with the story we read earlier.
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to play those kids games, Leo? Look at some real games.
Loser.
Exactly. Yeah, and one fun fact, I think, which is the glory of, I think, my brother's being a brother. It was his most glorious moment, is that I was playing Halo for some time, and then I was getting really good at it, and he had some friends that were in his class, and I was beating his friends that were like 4 years older than me, and he didn't really know how to feel about it until he found out that my name, Leonhard, the anagram for it is Halo Nerd.
Oh my God.
And then he was so satisfied with his whole life. It was, I like, he didn't care anymore that I was beating his friends. He found this thing where he could like run me into the ground with. It was amazing.
Oh God, Halo Nerd. This is so funny. So spot on.
Is that now your online gamer tag?
No, I'm like I've played the new Halo a bit, but I didn't really like it that much, to be honest. I was into shooters a lot, but I think the games that I really, really appreciated the most were like Guild Wars and the Elder Scrolls series, because I love sort of these immersion games, like where the music, what can I say? Yeah, that was always really, really my thing. Like I still love, like, as well, what Jonathan mentioned nowadays, Disco Elysium is, I think, for me, a new way to get immersed, because you don't have the mechanics that you know for 20 years already that are still the same, but you have new mechanics that draw you in again and allow you to understand new systems, which is fun, and then at the same time really enjoy the world through the vibe and the music.
To maybe get back a little bit more to the businessy side, because I wanted to ask something that maybe is a conundrum for you, because if you knew the correct answer, then you would probably just do it like that. But what I was interested in is, and we talked about this before also in person, this thing where now if you do music for games, obviously now there's like lots of people who do or want to do music for games. So you told us about like how you went on Reddit and offered it for free. And then there's this, like you said, this composer email that like every studio feels like you're bombarded with that like list of people who want to offer their music. And to me, this is a really fascinating like dynamic in a way, because it's been that way since I can think of working in games. Like when I was working at Black Pants, it was, I mean, for the first game, they had this really cool idea of like looking out for bands specifically and doing a soundtrack for it, and then also having the bands earn from it. So they approached bands that they liked. So I thought that was a really cool soundtrack like idea. But how do you see this? Like, there are people who make music, there are people who need music, but then there's this like huge, like, how do you filter out like who is good? Obviously, then many studios already like worked with somebody, then why would you change that person? So how do you feel about that dynamic, or how do you see that going in like terms of like explain how your business works, because we never had actually somebody here who does music for games.
I think, as I mentioned earlier briefly, I think it takes the sort of working relations we have with teams that we know and that trust us and our ability to create the music, but also trust our sort of instinct and style. Those are the most valuable that we have, because having that sort of freedom to work in your own, you need a lot of like of your own space, I think, to make really good music, because you need to like enter this world, and it really helps to have people that trust you to enter that space, take some time for yourself, and they know you'll come back and they'll love it. I think that's what the teams that we've been working with for a while, what makes them so necessary for us, I think. And from there, they recommend us to people. It's a lot of like mouth to mouth people talking to each other and giving our contacts. And then
I think we had an enormous luxury with Trollbound, the team that we did the first project Pine with, because they, you know, as Jonathan said, they trust us inherently and really show this constantly to us. So we started with that, and I think then once we started looking for other projects, we were like, oh, this is a cool title, and we want to kind of work on that. But I think we then really quickly noticed in these sort of conversations or calls that sometimes you just don't have that feeling, which we were used to with Trollbound. And I'm super thankful for that, because then we really quickly realized that it's more about the sort of personal connection, and that you understand from each other what you're trying to do and what the space is that you need. I think if we hadn't started with Trollbound and this luxury, we might have needed a longer journey to understand this and to get off from this, oh, we want to do a cool project with a cool name thing.
How would you describe your style? In like, do you have a, like, I guess it's also like a technique question in a way, but do you say that each of you has their own style, and then there's the Tumult Kollektiv style, or can any of you like also like emulate another person's style of your group, or talk a little bit about that? Asking from the point of view that I know from an artist perspective, like you can basically, if you are good enough, then teach or imitate somebody to, or like, teach somebody to imitate your style, or somebody can learn that if you're good enough in a technique sense that you can reproduce somebody else's work. So it is acceptable in their style. So how do you think about that in terms of creating music?
I think you can always, I could describe Jonathan's style, I think, for sure. And I think it's also, with this commercial music thing, we always learned really to copy others, because you always get sent these things and they're like, oh, copy this. So then you start understanding that copying is not that hard. But then again, if you want to do it sustainably, you need to be able to do it from a natural place, what we discussed earlier. And I think that's what for each other, we try to build a space where we can access this and where we can find our natural place of creation. So I think we have a special situation where we don't try to imitate each other or what the other does, and not try to focus too much on what the other two are doing, but always produce from this sort of natural sense, if that makes sense.
I think it's also similar to if you like what we did for advertisements. There's one spot and everyone pitches their idea, their musical demo for it, and then they pick the one they like. And we sort of have a similar process here in house, I think, where it's everyone has their musical sensibilities and their talents, and then you relate it to a project and you try to find a style or a voice for a project that's unique to that thing and that really supports what they're trying to achieve. And then every one of us has sort of this phase where they try their hand at it and see what they think works. And then we sort of present that to each other. And instead of picking one thing, we see okay, this element that this person brought to the table is really cool. And we can take it and develop from there. And I think that's if everything goes ideally for us, that's sort of we hope to sort of achieve a spiral there that really fuels each other. You hear something that someone else made and you're oh, that's such a cool idea. That really works with what I had tried to do here, and I'll try and incorporate that idea there. And through sort of this process of inspiring each other, we try to focus it more and more. Okay, cool, this is an idea that I would have never had, but I can use it here. And then maybe these two other ideas that I wasn't so sure about, I can drop those. And that I think makes us able to find something richer than we would if we were just on our own, always with our own ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it fuels a bit our philosophy as Tumult Kollektiv, where we want to make a soundtrack for a game which sounds as if it has been developed over a longer time, as if it could come from an artist whose sole thing is to make this style of music. So we want to have music that is really, really developed, because we feel like it. People in games often accept the fact that music for games sounds somewhat, I don't know. Sometimes it can sound haphazardly, sort of. Oftentimes it doesn't, but I do feel in film music can sound more developed sometimes.
But there's also, I think, in film, for me, a lot of film music is very formulaic. It's been done for so long. They work with temp music so much, and then there's such a reliance on sort of symbols of music that people recognize, which is super effective, but not necessarily interesting. And I think in games, because it's still younger, and a lot of the developers maybe don't know so much about music, but also their ego isn't as inflated as maybe with some of the big filmmakers. They allow us a lot of space to try our own stuff. And I think that's what makes it super exciting for us, to try and find something unique there.
And I think that's really the nice dynamic of being with the three of us, that you can make a really developed sounding sound, I hope. I mean, I'm saying all these things, but that's what I hope,
That's what we're aiming for.
That's what we're aiming for. Because
I think that's such a great pitch, by the way, just because you joked about it right now. You need a vector, right? Like that you're aiming for. And this is, I was just kind of listening. And when you said our goal is to have music that sounds like we would have worked much longer on it. I think that's such a great ambition as well, right? Like, yeah, just commenting because you joked about it. No, I think it's super legit. It's such a good pitch, I think.
Yeah, I think it only works because you can cherry pick these ideas from each other and incorporate them. Because if you're alone, you would need more time to iron out certain things that don't work yet, maybe.
It's also harder to come up with new ideas, I think, because like you come project after project and there's always like new inspiration, of course, from the art and the concept and the gameplay. But it's so nice to just have like 3 people that generate ideas, and then every new idea that comes up like opens new doors in your head as well.
Yeah, and sometimes one of us is more prone to having fancy ideas, and then another time it's someone else, and then you can build on that. And yeah, you always have a good balance between each other, which is really nice, because if you're alone, of course, you have ups and downs, and it's super nice that sometimes when you have a down in your output, that someone else can fill that up and you could sort of tag along on that.
Yeah. And that's like a conversation, like I'm getting real conversational vibes, right? From what you're saying. Like for me, because my primary art form, let's say, is conversation. I do a lot of podcasting, a lot of conversing in my private life. That's where I'm very creative, and you've that's what you do around music as well, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, here's my little bid on what I feel in the moment. Is like, what do you guys think about that? And then that's good. 1 + 1 + 1. Whether it's conversation, music, comedy, it's all going off what the previous person said in a meaningful way, and and trusting each other. And I was wondering, we don't often actually on here ask for advice, but for this whole episode, I've been having this impulse. So, what coming from this school you went to, from all these like kind of goal-oriented behaviors, let's say, that we discussed a little bit, to now, being a pretty well-established music studio for games. For anybody, whether it's in music for games specifically or games, who might be listening to this, who wants to know what to do, which is always a bit of an arbitrary question, but what I feel like you have a pretty good like set of experiences on successful actions. What would kind of your advice be to somebody who wants to make it or wants to achieve something, or whatever the entry point is on that?
I think like from my experience, it's super important to do a lot, and through that find the people that you really love working with and that enjoy working with you. And I think like building on that you don't always need to like look for the big names, the big projects, but look around the people, like maybe in your school, or maybe there's another school studying game design or teaching game design, where there are people that you can work with that are on your level and that you can grow with together. I think that's super valuable to build those relationships as early as you can.
Yeah, I think it's some people from our studies, including me, sometimes really started shitting on it. But the longer time passes between my studies and the now, I realize how valuable the personal connections were, and this context that makes you feel in place somewhere. So I, in the beginning, when I got this question, should I study music or should I just go do my own thing? I still say depends, but if you're like me and you need context, it can immensely help. Even if you're a lone wolf, it can really be super helpful. Like all of the connections and things we did come from this network of this one study,
Mm-hmm. And even that we like have us to rely on, and we know each other super well. Yeah. And that gives so much direction, as you mentioned earlier as well. Like we know that we can rely on each other and that we're working to this goal together. And that, I think, gives just a sense of security and sort of, if you can find people with a similar goal, that's really, really valuable.
Yeah. And would you say you guys are working like towards a goal right now, or is it more like that you have found the process and you're just kind of dancing around this center, around this being together, doing together, or are you guys like approaching a specific goal together?
Well, we talked about this with our coach because she was sort of sharpening our sense of togetherness a little bit by, checking what each of our individual motivations are. And yeah, I think we always had this shared goal, and we did put it into words a bit more now. And I think it mostly comes down a lot to authenticity as well, where we really want to each of us speak truthfully in music. Like we want to do music. That's our individual needs already. But together, I think we just found partners where we know that together we can help each other speak in a more truthful musical voice, basically. So we can share the load, the financial load. We can support each other in the things that we're bad at or good at. And in that way, make space for sort of creative development and make space for finding your own voice, because we don't only want to make music for games, but we're also on the side always sort of trying to have space to for our own musical dabblings, basically.
Yeah, which I think are important as well too.
Yeah.
And I think the studio is going to be a big changing factor for us as well. Having more people, I think, will be super exciting. More people to talk to and see what everyone is up to. And that's been a big project for us as well, like arranging everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the plan, I mean, we talked about it in the beginning, but so how much space do you have? Like how many companies, individuals are you planning on gathering in that place?
7 parties, or we have 7 rooms, and then in total we're taking up 3 rooms, so that's 1 party, and then we have 4 other rooms to be filled, so in total 5 parties, basically.
All right. And did you already find people, or are you like still looking? Or is the progress going on that?
No, we already found people. It went very fast. I think, yeah.
Booked out.
Ah.
Nice.
Yeah. We had this every time we spoke to it about it with someone. It went super fast. Like within a day, there was someone on our doorstep, basically virtually, that wanted to have it, which makes sense. I mean, in the current Berlin situation, I think it's really hard, especially in music, to find rooms that are properly suited for the purpose.
And so the people who will come there, can you share a little bit without, I mean, you can, but you don't have to mention names or companies or whatever. Like what fields are they from? Is it all music? Is it games? Is it ping pong? Or what do they do?
I don't know if we have it fully confirmed yet. But Happy Broccoli Games are one of the studios that will be joining in a room, which was super exciting.
Shout out.
Yeah, big shout out. We've been hanging out with them a lot, and I don't know, I think it'll be really, really nice to have them as neighbors. And that's what I was really hoping for, like have people in other disciplines in the rooms next to us as well. So we can, like, sometimes you're done with music and you need to talk about something else, and then that gives you energy again and just new ideas.
Yeah.
So really excited about them.
Yeah, exactly. I was really, really happy about that as well, because I mean, it's cool to be with people in the space that only do music, but and I didn't actually consider it that much to ask them or ask others in other fields, because I thought like, oh, what did I want with this like super isolated booth that we're building in each room. But then they mentioned it themselves, and I was like super, super excited because of what Jonathan said. Because you have this cross-pollination. Our coach would be proud right now because that's a word she was sort of pumping into our heads all the time.
It's really funny because you said something very early in this episode, and I'm like, why didn't he use the word cross-pollination there? That would have been the perfect word. And here it is. Very nice.
Did you receive a business coaching at some point, Simon?
No, I business coached myself, and I hammered the word into my head myself.
Also great word to describe what MediaNet is all about. Bringing the industries together. Obviously, this is the games part that we're talking, but obviously MediaNet is in all the other fields of media and digital industries. So of course, yes, we're happy that music people come to us, music people who make games, music for games people come to us who need music for games, and so on. So shout out to the people who pay my salary.
And I mean,
Yes.
and
Great.
this Happy Broccoli thing is a result of MediaNet. Just want to say
Nice.
that they're coming into our place. And yeah, the other rooms are musicians and sound engineers.
Guys, this sounds really good. It sounds like you have money in the bank and wine in the tank.
I was just going to think, is he going to make that whole... is he going to say the whole title? But yes, he did.
Heck yes.
Heck yes, a
Wow,
pneumatic
true fan.
press.
Who comes up with your song titles?
I saw this.
on that one.
I saw this. Sorry, what did you say?
Mostly Leo on that one. He had like
Okay.
he had a good run.
Yeah, I had a day of great titles. I don't know where that came from.
All in one day. It must have been a good day for a Chardonnay.
Yeah.
You know, I saw in my research, which I did, of course, prior to the episode, far in the past, when I pondered, not 10 minutes before, I stumbled upon this track list and I had a big laugh. And now this game is in my Steam cart.
Nice.
So, yeah, 100 Days is what we're talking about, for which you guys made the music, and looks really cute. A little bit of Stardew Valley energy. We like wine, but these song titles, man. These song titles.
They sell games.
Shall we begin wrapping this up? We have some essential questions for you, some quick-fire questions that we like to ask.
Sure.
And then we could wrap it up, unless somebody had something very important that we forgot.
I know.
No, I think, I wanted to say one thing about the advice, which I'm always super keen about, which sort of connects to something I said earlier, which is advice to people is embrace the things that you suck at. Because when you, like with this piano thing that I couldn't play piano, that I was really bad at, I always just loved finding out the older I got that this made me be better at other things that people are not that proficient at because they've spent time honing this piano skill, for example. And I thought when I saw other people in our studies, I thought it was so super valuable and important thing to realize that whenever you're bad at something and you compare yourself to the status quo and you realize like, oh, damn, I suck, then there's always something else that you are then good at, because you do spend your time thinking about things in your brain and working out things.
I had this sort of theory that I know doesn't work, but I think because I played so many RPGs, I feel like whenever I feel like, oh, this person I don't really like this aspect about them, I'm thinking they must have really put all of their points into something else. And the points are maybe like time in this case, like how you invest your time is what you train and get good at.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I just want to, before we start with the essential questions, just say one more time enschede, because I think that's important for me to
Say
say
once
that.
more.
Once more.
Enschede.
So nice.
Right.
We could do a whole podcast around this.
ASMR Enschede podcast.
Yeah.
Enschede. Groningen.
Oh, there Simon said it as well, secretly.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I can. Good advice, I think. Compare yourself to yourself yesterday, not to the others.
I think you found that on a list of
Inspirational
advice.
quotes? No. Couldn't be. Okay, speaking of that, we have 10 and a half, 11 questions for you. And I will begin. Are you ready?
Yep.
Question for you guys. What inspires you?
How do we do this? Do we just go one by one?
You go first.
One each, and you can go like super fast or
Super
something.
fast.
No.
I say unique and authentic expression.
Same and vibey moments, sort of moments in time that have a very specific atmosphere.
Nice. What would you say is the purpose of your being?
Food. Eating food and making music.
Yeah, I think eating food and making music in an authentic way. I would love eating authentically. No, I mean eating.
Can you stop always saying just same?
Yeah. I always.
I got all the answers. That's the issue. Is you have two
You
people
just
on.
know. Yeah.
Okay. I found a different take on it. I think authenticity, finding authenticity, not only in myself, but also in things I consume. So, when we're talking about eating food, finding food that someone made from their soul.
Nice. Soul food.
What is a beautiful day to you?
One that starts with a big breakfast.
One where I guess I made great music. It's really one thing that always makes me happy. So cliche. I'm sorry. That's what it is.
That's
Deal with
fine. Hey, these are simple questions with potentially simple answers. That is good. What is the change you want to see in the world?
Oof.
Well, that's a simple question. More loving.
Yeah, more loving, and I think again authenticity. I'm coming back to it a lot.
Just give the same answer to every question.
You can,
also,
of course.
also dinner prices.
Hey,
have
but a
to go
different take.
down.
Yeah. Okay, now the question is, how do you contribute to that?
Yeah, but I guess in this game context, finding teams where you can do that with, express yourself with, what we said earlier, nice loop back, because then you can create a product together which strives away from the sort of, let's take a formula and repeat it until everyone thinks that they only want this formula, which happens in TV shows or something, in my opinion, a lot. Like I love older TV shows as where they didn't discover a formula yet, and there wasn't like producers that said, but now you need a cliffhanger because we got to make more money. And I think that's how we want to contribute to this authenticity, by finding partners that see the same thing and then put that into the world.
Yeah, and music is always like, I don't know, it's always about sharing as well. It's about ego, I think, sometimes, but ideally it's about sharing. And that's the laugh.
Nice.
Nice. When do we switch, Flo? I forget.
Well, it's still your questions until question number 7.
I see. If you would start a new save game in your life right now, what occupation would your new character have?
Oof.
So would I start right now? I would wake up or do I start back at 0?
I'm feeling more like, yeah. I mean, for me, it's kind of the same, because it's like you start a new game, but then you already know the game, kind of like, so you can like think ahead a little bit. And
I'm really happy with what I'm doing, but as a kid, I always wanted to be a marine biologist and go like as deep down in the ocean as you can. I think that'd be my alternative.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, the other change I would love to contribute to is more like the happening in an environmental sense, and maybe then that which my mother put me off from doing, which is sort of environmental studies, and maybe
we could
politics.
hang out in the ocean, Leo.
What?
We could hang out at the ocean. You study the ocean and I'll bring up shells from the bottom.
Sounds like a great creative partnership.
Yes.
Okay, and then last one from me. Do you have any books that you like or that you'd like to recommend, maybe like to give to people? Maybe 1 each, 2 each, however much you have.
One book that I always liked is 100 Years of Solitude. I find that very enchanting.
It is. It's so funny.
Yeah, I love the writing and sort of the magical realism in that, and sort of, the way reality is given a nice little spin. I find that very inspiring.
I love not anything, but most of the Hemingway books are really, I really like them. The one, what was the name again? The Sun Also Rises is really nice. But the most famous one, I forgot the name. Can you guys help me?
Oh, Old Man by the Sea or something?
No.
For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Also, that one is really good. Farewell to Arms is really good. What's the German name? I think I just read the German one. That's why I know the German name. Anyway, where they drink a lot of wine and with the bull fighting. That one's
What's so
really
nice about the Hemingway? I've never read him.
I think what I said earlier, what inspires me is these moments in time that have a really specific atmosphere. I think Hemingway manages to capture that incredibly well. I always had a very strong sense of the world he was describing. And that's what I really love about those books.
Okay, thank you. Gives me a bit of inspiration. Over to you, sir.
Yes. Yeah, so what are your favorite games? Also 1 or 2 each, maybe.
Do we want to say it in unison, Jonathan?
Are you just going to say same again?
Nah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Disco Elysium!
I think that's
that's cute.
Yeah. Huge inspiration for the last years. Yeah. Really love the way storytelling is done. And apart from that, Slay the Spire, I've been playing a lot as well.
Oh, so good. Slay the Spire.
Nice. Who's somebody from the games industry, and I guess you can also like make it the broader games industry, if you will, who you would like to get to know?
Maybe, the guys from Disco Elysium, but I feel like they're just into their own vibe and they're jamming away. Maybe we should leave them be.
Don't disturb.
I was thinking
Disco
about
Elysiums.
Exactly.
Thinking about the guy that did Tiny Wings.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's probably fascinating to talk to, and I wonder what he's doing now. He's probably still making stuff.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, as always at that point, I don't know if you guys already know this and have prepared for it, but there's a trap in this, which part of GamesNet Berlin Europe, as you know, and of MediaNet, is to connect people. So I will have a challenge, or we will have a challenge to make that happen, like make a wish. So we hope to connect you to them over the whatever amount of time it will happen.
Oh, awesome.
So at one point you might just find an email in your inbox saying meet X.
Cool.
Actually, the Disco Elysium guys, I should have an old contact from them because they were at Indie Arena booth when I was working there, and I think I wrote once or twice to them because they are from Estonia, and I always wanted to get them to my games convention in Vilnius in Lithuania at GameOn. Yeah, haven't spoken to them in like forever because you're actually right, they are very in their own vibe, I felt. But I will try. Yes. Who is someone you know who you think we should have on this podcast?
Do they have to be German MediaNet associates?
No, of course not. Jeez.
Okay, no,
These are not paid actors.
Okay,
You would know.
Well, one person we've
You
been
better
having,
say the people I already wrote on the list I gave you.
We're gonna risk it all, Jonathan.
I have there's a guy that has a Späti on our street.
Oh yeah.
You need to understand this is games in Europe. Does he have any connections to games?
I don't know, but I
Wotan,
don't know
he's
much
sick.
about him. Yeah, I would love to hear him talk.
Yeah,
Is he a special type of guy?
he's a special type of guy for sure. He
Apart from
always
that-
wants to get. He one time heard that I have a saz, like this instrument, stringed instrument, and then since then he has been harassing me to give him my saz in exchange for a crate of Berliner Pilsner.
Well, that will never fly. That beer is incredibly bad. Sorry if that. Hope I don't, destroy any media
affiliate
Berlin
here.
connections.
No.
But everybody knows, right? This is just not the beer to trade with.
Yeah, I think he sees it all. He sees people buying all types of beer, so he's over that. I think he's over beer preferences. He's a meta Spitz owner.
A meta beer trader.
Interesting source to have on the podcast for sure.
But I think we've been having a lot of fun with Joel Schoch, who's the composer for what's the name?
Far.
Lone Sales.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's super cool.
He's,
And also Matthijs from Torband
Yeah, absolutely.
would also be really, really fun.
Yeah.
Our hero and unofficial manager and part of making this all possible.
Yeah, exactly. And Joel Schoch is also someone who has a lot to say and is a fountain of words.
Of youth.
Of youth as well.
Fountain of words. All right. So, where can people find you? Meaning not where do you live, but online.
Our website is probably the best place to find us because it's so cool. We put a lot of energy into it. It's tumultkollektiv.com.
And also follow our Instagram for all of your...
Oh yeah, we need more followers.
Exactly.
Yeah. We will put all the accounts in the notes for the show as well.
Cool.
Alrighty.
Thanks a lot.
That's a wrap.
That was fun.
That was fun. Thank you guys.
That was fun. I really enjoyed the dynamic of this podcast.
Yeah.
First time
Yeah,
with
how's the
people on.
two-
How's that? Yeah.
2 people setting for you?
Yeah, I mean it's quite fun. You know each other very well, so I think it's cool that you like. It sometimes feels like talking to one person, but then also you differ in other points. So I found it very interesting to talk to you.
I feel like we all talked and came from a lot of relaxation and natural creativity, honestly. So there was no like There was I felt very chill about this. So yeah, I enjoyed it too. Thank you guys.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. All right. See you next time on the podcast. To our listeners, see you soon in person. To our guests, and have a good one.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hi there, Simon here. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you like what you hear here and you would like to hear more here, feel free to follow or to subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you get your audio fix. We appreciate you and we promise you to bring you many more insightful conversations with fantastic games industry guests from Berlin and from all over Europe. Thank you very much and see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Hi there. Before you go, this is Florian, Project Manager for GamesNet Berlin Europe. If you want to stay connected to the network, find out more about upcoming events and links to other MediaNet initiatives, you can visit us at gamesnetberlin.eu and subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, and until next time.